Yeah, it's a different sort of challenge for us, definitely, Rob. You're trying to manage the load for the group. This is an incredibly intense period for players everywhere, and we're very conscious of that. So we need to manage the three fixtures. We want to give players opportunities to play. We've got to manage the physical load of training. So normally you try to keep the entire group together for every session, but we had a lot of players that played on Sunday and have had a heavy schedule the previous week. So some were only back on the training pitch today. And it does take a lot of plotting, but it's a good coaching challenge, really.
I have to ask you about Tammy Abraham, Jadon Sancho and Ben Chilwell. They're not going to face any police sanctions for that party they attended on Saturday night. But what's the strength of your feeling about what they did?
Well, I think the players have already accepted that they were in the wrong. They've broken those lockdown guidelines that are there. I have to be very careful about being on my moral high horse about things that happen when we're not in camp with the team. We do have an issue in terms of the COVID guidelines and making sure that any player that comes in is as low a risk as possible in terms of the whole group. So we're having to monitor the players. They will have been tested today, possibly tomorrow. We've got to check for any further symptoms. So they obviously missed the game with Wales. If they're not able to be with us before Friday morning, then they would also miss the game with Belgium. So we can't give a definitive answer of when they'll be in because of all the things we're having to track. But that's the basic timeline for us.
You mentioned symptoms and testing there. Have they tested negative with the initial test? Have they had any symptoms?
I don't think we should be sharing all of that medical information at this point. At the moment, they're all in consideration for later in the week. We just have to track what that happens and make sure that we're, as I said, protecting the whole group, really. That's key because we have a unique bubble where you're bringing everybody from different environments. That's not going to be perfect because, as we've seen with some other nations, you can get positive tests and the timelines on the incubation period are very complex, but we've got to manage that as securely as we can.
You're quite right in saying that these three weren't actually in camp. They weren't in England jurisdiction, if you like, to a large extent. But that is 5 England players now, Gareth, in the last month who've breached the coronavirus rules. And you've spoken to the players a lot about their responsibilities. Do you feel your message is maybe not getting through? Is there a discipline issue within this England camp?
Well, I don't think we can attribute what happens when players are the responsibility of their clubs to England. But what we did at the beginning of this week, we had a very good meeting, I felt, with all of the players, where we talked about the responsibility of being an England player, how the spotlight is different. When the story was in the paper earlier in the week, there was no mention of the clubs the players play for. They were cast as England players, even though they weren't with us. So that's the landscape we work in, and players have to realise that, whether they've got 1 cap or 50 caps. There's a big thing for us that when these sorts of incidents happen, it takes a lot of focus, it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy away from the team. And, we can't afford that. We need the focus to be on the games. The players that have been within the camp are 100% focused on the games. Their attitude all week's been excellent. Their approach to training has been top. But if you're going into major tournaments and you have those sorts of incidents, then they can derail you. I've seen that in the past. That wasn't the case ahead of Russia. We went in a very calm state, and that allowed us to focus on our football. And I saw other teams not in that position, and it had a real detrimental effect to the way they were able to go into the tournament. And I've also talked before about the connection with the fans that, we've worked very hard over the last 3 or 4 years to bring back. Key to that has been the contribution of players that have been with us. We've got 10 with us this time who were with us in Russia. They've done a lot of good work with us, with their clubs, within the communities, and they've played well and they've got results. Some of the younger ones haven't done that yet. with England. They don't have that credit in the bank. They've got to prove themselves, and they need to remember that it is an honour to play for England, and all of these things, as we're selecting squads moving forward, do play a part in your thinking. So it's very difficult for me to stand here, and I'm not going to be too moralistic because we've all made errors in our lives. I'm the same. I've been a player. I've had nights out, so I'm not sitting here saying that I haven't done any of the things. We're living in really unique times with the COVID regulations, and everybody from politicians to businessmen to footballers are having, have erred within that field. So I think as a country, in terms of fighting the virus, we need to get a little bit back on track of working together. I felt really positive about us at the beginning of lockdown. Everybody was out supporting the NHS. People were doing shopping for their neighbours. Everyone was pulling together. There's a lot of disharmony now, and we are all in this situation together. And I think we've got to work together to pull through it as a country.
Thank you, Gareth. If I can have a quick word with Connor as well alongside you, if that's okay. Connor, good to see you again. Gareth was absolutely glowing in his praise of you when you made your debut last month. Absolutely excellent throughout was what he said to us after the game. You're clearly going to play against Wales as well tomorrow night. That's why you're sitting alongside the manager now. So what does all this mean to you? And how do you make this place in the starting 11 your own for the foreseeable future and with the Euros next summer in mind?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, that from the gaff was brilliant. It was something where I mentioned last time after the Denmark game, before the Denmark game, it was everything I dreamed of and more. Honestly, it was incredible. And now I've got to the second camp. The feeling's exactly the same. It's been amazing. This week's been fantastic in terms of training, and it's been something where we've focused on these 3 games because they're 3 big games for us. It's something where I think since the last camp finished, we were looking forward to this one because, as I mentioned, the game's come thick and fast at international level now with everything that's going on in the world and with the international duty not happening for so long. It's something where the game's coming thick and fast. So it's enjoyable. It's something we're all looking forward to. But for me, it's just about learning off these players who are here. I'm here with world-class players. And I knew that all along, even before I joined the England setup. It was something where I watched England every single week, every single international duty, to see how they got on. And like I said, to learn off these players is fantastic. So we'll see what the future holds. For me, it's just about improving. And as long as I can help the players in, help the team here whenever I'm called upon, that's all that matters to me.
Thanks, Connor. I'll hand on to the rest of the guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Next, we go to Kerry Brown from beIN Sports. Kerry, I think you're on mute. Sorry.
Apologies, thank you. Gareth, due to the COVID breach ahead of your last match and because you were without a dearth of players due to injury or due to coming back from the summer break, you opted for a conservative approach. You've had a bit more preparation time after this breach. So what can we expect to see from this team to build on what you have with some familiar faces back in and some new faces back in, and what are your key objectives?
Yeah, I think when we're talking about a conservative approach, that's a little bit the profile of people we picked in certain positions, but also we were playing a system for the first time in a long while, and I thought that gave us great solidity. It gave us great control with the ball. But obviously we want to be more of an attacking threat. But when you've not worked for 10 months as a group, you need time on the training pitch, and the process of improving as a team is to play, is to review performances, is to look at what can be better and to put those ideas into the team. So that's what we've talked a lot about this week. You don't have that time that you get at a club. Even with the shortest of pre-seasons, you get 2 or 3 weeks with the club. We get 2 or 3 days every time, so we have to maximise that. But there's always a process of improvement. How do we get better? How do we make sure both sides of the game are right? And that's what we're focused on this week.
Some key forwards out now. Jose Mourinho, ahead of your squad announcement, did urge you to be cautious with Harry Kane's time. He has since apologised for calling you Gary and said that you can call him John. But he said you have had a conversation. So did you get your point of view over to what do we call him now, the special John? And have you accepted his apology?
Oh, absolutely. Look, I have to say he messaged me privately anyway to apologise, and I knew because he's called me Gary before in a media conference a few years ago, and so I kind of knew, goodness me, we have coaches coming here who can speak 4 or 5 languages. To get every nuance of that right, I've huge admiration for the way they deal with that. Frankly, I've got O-level Spanish and French, but that's my limit. So I had no issue with that at all. I said to him, there's only one Gareth that he's got to get right, and he'll score all the goals for him this year. So from my point of view, not an issue at all. In terms of the players, we've got to look after all the players, and I think we've always done that. We don't take risks. I've been a player. I didn't like it if managers took risks with me, but they never did, because I always knew whether I was ready or whether I wasn't, and I was prepared to go for things a little bit more than I think we do now. Medically, we're a lot tighter in this day and age. So we don't want players missing any football. I'm not prepared to risk players' welfare. We will balance the minutes of the squad. We have to do that. There's a huge schedule through the season. But I think we can keep freshness in the team for the 3 games and field teams that are more than capable of winning all 3.
Thank you, Gary. Next, we'll go to Alex Howell from BBC Sport.
Hi, Gareth.
Hi there.
Just how hard is it to be a young player in this day and age, and especially throughout the coronavirus pandemic?
Well, I think to be a player, full stop, is more difficult than people might realise. The journey to becoming a professional player is an incredibly difficult one. You've got to have incredible qualities to get there. Then the spotlight now, of course, on everybody is increased. When you're an international player, that's increased even more. But these are the things that our more senior players have tried to help with this week. We're recognising that young people will make mistakes. You generally make fewer of those mistakes as you get older. Not always, but that is normally the process of life. So we have to help them. We have to explain how it affects the team, explain how it might limit their opportunity. We've got 3 boys now who've already missed 1 game. They may end up having to miss another one. So that hurts themselves as well as the team. And the key part is making sure that these things don't hurt the team.
And on morals, responsibilities and respect, a lot's been made when Dominic Calvert-Lewin met you yesterday and took his hat off as kind of a show of respect. Is it nice to see that from a player?
I was really, it really hit me when he did it, actually. I know he's commented on it since, but it was a small thing, but I think those small things are really important. I wouldn't insist everybody does that, but you take on board things like that, don't you? I have to say, there's a lot of talk about our group at the moment, and it doesn't reflect the characters and personalities that we've got, in actual fact. So it's I think the group in general would find it difficult that they're being tarnished with being personalities and characters that they're not. You can run through any number of names to see the good work that they've been doing, that they've done. That again, I think galvanizes the whole group to say, hang on a second, we've got to start to get a grip of what we're doing away from here. The hard part of that is I don't have control over that. When players are in their own time or with their clubs, they don't have control of that. What we're certain on is if anything happens within our camp, then we do have the opportunity to affect that. And further down the line, we've got to just make sure that we're selecting the right characters that we can rely on when we're in the key moments of matches.
Thank you, Alex. Next, we'll go to Jack Rosser from the Evening Standard.
Hi, Gareth.
Hi, Jack.
I just wanted to ask about Ruben Loftus-Cheek quickly. He's one of the players that moved and said he wanted to do it to get back to his best and to do it so he had a shot at getting in the Euro squad. A lot of players have cited that. Do you think leaving a top 6 club for a club that look like they're going to be in relegation battle is the right thing to do, as long as it's getting in minutes? And can he get back into your plans playing at Fulham?
Whenever I speak to players about these sorts of situations, first and foremost, they've got to do what's right for their career, number one. And England is a consequence of that further down the line. So I think when you're making career decisions, you want to be playing football first and foremost. And if there's more likelihood of playing football regularly at Fulham, given the amount of football that Ruben's unfortunately missed with various injuries, then for his own development and his own enjoyment of his career, then I think that's key. And then if he can play well, then getting back in the England team gets on the radar. But he's missed nearly 18 months. I mean, really unfortunate to get the injury. He was having a super spell with Chelsea going into the latter stages of the Europa League. Misses nearly a year. Then just as he's getting back to fitness, we have the pandemic. So he's missed a huge chunk. Very unfortunate. But we know the talent that he has. We know what he's capable of. Hopefully he can get back to playing regularly with Fulham, and then he can go from there.
Cheers, Gareth.
Thanks, Jack. Next we'll go to Lewis Cox from the Wolverhampton Express and Star.
Just for Connor, if possible. Connor, hope you're well. I just wonder how training with Gareth and the squad compares to being back in Compton and under Nuno.
Well, first and foremost, it's been brilliant. It's been something where the last two camps I've enjoyed more than anything. In terms of comparing it back at Wolves, it's something where we have top players at Wolves as well. Real top players where the intensity and everything is really, really high every single day. So to prepare myself for coming here has been great because, like I said, the amount of talent and everything we've got at Wolves have been brilliant. But speaking about England now and being here, the whole training, everything that comes with it, the tactical aspect of it, listening and everything that comes with it has been absolutely incredible. And I'm learning every time I come. Every single time I go onto the training pitch, I'm learning, and that's the most important thing. But in terms of comparing it to Wolves, it's been great because, as I mentioned, we've got some fantastic players at Wolves who I love playing with every single day as well.
Yeah. Do you think that your sort of progression as an individual with Wolves and as a team is sort of highlighted with another call-up? You sort of reaping the rewards?
I'll be honest, I don't look at it like that. I look at it in terms of every single time I play for Wolves, I try and help the team. I try and help the club as much as I possibly can. And that's something I say all the time. And that's no different when I get called up to international duty as well. I just want to make sure that I'm ready when and if I'm called upon by the gaffer to help my teammates, to help the team move forward and improve and hopefully get results. And I think that's the most important thing. I'm not someone who looks too far ahead. I look at what's going on now. And at the minute, I'm a very proud man to represent my country.
Thanks, Colin.
Thanks, Lewis. Next we'll go to Jack Pitbrod from The Athletic.
Hi, Gareth.
Jack.
With 3 camps left before the Euros, what's your current thinking on the goalkeeping position?
Well, I think we've got to be careful about using the 3 camps left in terms of, where should we be as a team and where should we be in our thinking, because we had no games for 10 months. So we've had to start again, really. The momentum that we had, we've had to start again. Clearly, we know that Jordan has made errors. Nick actually made errors at the weekend, and Dean has only played the League Cup games so far against, sort of changed lineups with the opponents. So there's a very close contest. And all 3, we don't have any hesitation in putting all 3 in goal. We will make a change tomorrow because I think it's a good opportunity to get other people on the field. And if you're taking goalkeepers away and they're not getting the opportunity to play, that's one of the hardest things. We've had keepers over the years who've retired because of that being a really difficult situation to handle. So I think for the harmony of the squad and the group, we've got to make sure that we're doing that, as well as the fact we want that competition and to give people the opportunity to show what they can do. So I would say it's a very tight call. I always go back to the fact that Jordan's performances with us have been excellent. I'm not oblivious to what's happened to him at Everton, but there can be lots of factors within individuals' performances at their clubs and we've got to try and help them to be in their best possible form when they're with us, whatever the situation at their club is.
Thanks, Jack. And we'll go back to Carrie Brown from Bein Sports.
Gareth, on that, I think I'm casting my mind back to that remarkable World Cup run and everything that Nick Pope did with rehearsing penalties with Eric Dyer and how that led to a remarkable penalty shootout win for you. He's been a fantastic squad player, hasn't he? If he gets his opportunity, it'd be fully deserved.
100%. Any team, whether that's club or national team, is as strong as the squad, really. And that's not just in terms of people who can come in and play at a high level when they have to play, but it's the mentality around training, making sure that everybody is on point every day when they train together. They provide competition. You need good defenders to make forwards have to work harder in training. Good forwards make defenders, they challenge them, they make their learning and their improvement better. And you have to have that environment. And Nick has been a brilliant example of that. 56 odd days through the World Cup, totally selfless in his approach, being incredibly patient for his opportunity. And, they're the sorts of people we need in the squad. You need those reliable people who can play at a good level.
And you've had much more preparation time than the sudden changes you had to make ahead of your last game. Have any of those players that you've brought back into this squad in recent weeks been potentially challenging to get a starting place in the qualifiers now after this game, for those challenging those that aren't here now?
Well, when you say we've had more time, do you mean between the camps or?
Between bubbles being broken and preparation time to account for that?
Yeah, I mean, we've obviously only had a couple of days on the training pitch. So we come into the games with a reasonable idea of how we're going to manage the first two matches. And then, the third game really will need more assessment when we've got through the first two, because anything can happen over the next 10 days. You're seeing national teams have to change plans. Scotland on the eve of the game must be incredibly difficult for Steve with a game of such importance. But that is the reality of sport in every form at the moment. There's so much uncertainty that you've got to be adaptable and adjustable. I think it's why we're seeing some unique games and some unique performances, really. There's so much that is out of control and so much affecting athletes and sportsmen's lives that consistency of performance is difficult for everybody. But we've got to look for that. We've got to try to attain that, and we want to keep the run of results going and make sure our performance is at the highest possible level.
Thank you, Carrie. Okay, we've got time for just a couple more. So next we'll go to Fred Caldeira from Esporte Brazil.
Thank you, Andy. Hi, Gareth.
Hello.
We've all heard former England players sharing their thoughts of some difficulties that they had been in the past with the Premier League rivalries within the national team environment. And now after such a weird weekend in Premier League results, I wonder, you have players from Liverpool, from Aston Villa, from Manchester United, from Tottenham. I wonder if this is a challenge or if this is an opportunity for you to see that those two universes can live in harmony.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, I played in squads where that existed. I also played in squads where it didn't exist, I have to say. And we were, relatively successful through that. I think this group get on incredibly well. And I think it is acceptable for people to go hammer and tongs on a Saturday, Sunday, and then put that to one side and be close and be sitting at breakfast because they like to come with the national team. I think other countries do that. And I think these players definitely do that. I've seen that this week. There were difficult games for people to come through at the weekend. But we again spoke about this as a group. But I think it actually doesn't need saying with this group of players because they're so close. They enjoy coming back together. They understand that the rivalry is there, and quite right, they should really go for it when they're with their clubs. No quarter asked or given. But sport is about putting that to one side at the end of the game and shaking hands with the opponent. And then when you come with the national team, getting on with a different focus, which I think is a nice change of environment for them. You know, some guys are coming off a good game at the weekend. We want them to continue that. Some have had a more difficult game. This is a chance for them to change focus, put that out of their system, and focus on games with England.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. And we'll finish where we started with one more from Rob Dorsey at Sky.
Thanks, Andy. Gareth, a British derby game, if you like, England against Wales, is usually a pretty feisty affair, but obviously there aren't going to be any fans at Wembley, which disappoints everybody. But also, it's fair to assume that for England and Wales, you've got bigger, more important games to come in the coming days with the Nations League and competitive matches. How do you think all that's going to affect how the game's going to go?
Well, we've only got one match in our mind at the moment, and that's the game with Wales tomorrow. We have to, as a group of staff, plan the week, but our focus on preparing the team for this game has been exactly the same as it would be for any other game. And we know it's every time we play for England, it's important. We know that there's no such thing really as a friendly anyway, and certainly with playing Wales, we know what it means to them. But I would be disappointed if anybody thought that English players were less passionate about playing for their country or playing in a game like this than the Welsh. And we have to go and show that, but we've also got to play the way that we play and not focus on just being a battle against an opponent that has high motivation to play. Our team tomorrow, when you go through it, will have huge motivation to play. And it might lack a little bit of experience, but there's great opportunities for everybody, and a really good opportunity for us to learn a lot and to take on an opponent who will give us a super game tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. That concludes this media conference. Appreciate your time this evening.